Oh, you want my second phone?
That's where the setup
We're good.
All right, so let's learn. Before this year, this year so far, they say that it's one of the hardest years to not necessarily prepare for, but to give, because you're tired and whatever. That's not really the good. You're not really allowed to learn so much right now. So a little bit caught in between. We're supposed to juggle, and so we're going to learn. But it'll be the first tefillah, the first avodah. So the tefillah that we're in right now. It's been for a few hours already, but Tisha B'Av after Chatzos is a time that's a little bit confusing. On the one hand, the Dina of Avela still are in terms of the things that we do, Al Halacha, Al Din, are still in full swing. On the other hand, things that are more minute-based, like sitting on the floor and so on, we're not giving shalom to each other, that's a little bit more lighter, so we're standing, sitting in chairs and so on. It's a time that by Mincha, the Hashem will say the Tefillah of Nachem, which Hashem, the Ramah brings down Shulchan Aruch already, that's an indication that there's some level of Nechama going on right now. So we're going to deal with what exactly is the source of Nechama point after Chatzos, but you see this, it's like this, it almost feels like a little bit of a tug of war. Is it Avelis? Is it really holding by getting closer to Tuba? So which one is it? Clearly it's both. And clearly, it's avoid this to somehow find the nekuda of nechama within the avelos itself, not taking away from the avelos, but somehow them both being the same nekuda. So that's what we're going to try to investigate for the next few minutes. Well, beginning like this, there's a famous Gemara at the end of Damascus. Who knows the story? But there's one particular part of the story that's easily passed over. I'll just run through it quickly. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. That there was a Maisa with Rabbi Kiva and the Chachamim that Yerushalayim. They were traveling to Yerushalayim. Even Shekil Har Tzayfen. So it says in the Gemara that once they got to the Mount Tzayfen, a certain point outside Yerushalayim, but then you have a vista, you have a good view from there. Korbadan, the Rib Korean. Even Shigil Harabayis, and when they got to the Harabayis, so then the Gemara says the famous story, Rosh Shul, Shikoshim, he saw a fox, went in out with Shikoshim, so he went by him, he began to cry, or he was laughing. He asked Rabbi Kiva, why are you laughing? And he says, why are you crying? He said, why are you crying? The place that calls Shikoshim, such a place that it should have Shualim going in there, foxes going in there, it says Zarkar Yumas, and nevertheless, Shualim are there, so we shouldn't cry. He says that's why I'm laughing, because once we have clear evidence that the nevuah of Korban has been completed in a very strong way, that means the nevuah of Nechal will take place as well, and they respond to Kiv Nechal, Kiv. What's interesting is the first line, the opening line. What's the point of the story? Why is this being recorded? The reason for this story being recorded is for the Maisa, what happened by the Harav. That's the point. The Chachamim were tzibach, and Rabbi Kiva gives them comfort. That's the point of the Maisa. So why does the Gemara record the first part that they were going towards Yerushalayim and they were free when they got to Harav Tzayfen? It's unrelated to the subject of the story. The story should say Bamaras that Hayu Holchim Hayu Hayu Harav. What happened before? So it doesn't tell us the hotel stops before. Maybe there's other Maisa that took place. Why does the Gemara have to introduce the story with this Indian that when he got the Harav Tzayfen, they were free? And then when they got the Harav, it's the actual story that we're interested in. The Gemara is interested in telling us takes place. So evidently, this Indian of being created by Harav Tzayfen is a significant point, and to appreciate the ending of Akiv Nachamton. Akiv Nachamton, which as we'll see is the ending of the second half of Tisha B'Av, is important to, in order to understand that it has to come with the Achon, with the Akdama of ripping Kriya B'Harat Sefer. So what's this Indian of ripping Kriya B'Harat Sefer? So it's a sugi in halacha. I'll share with you just some basic ideas, and then we'll see where it takes us. It's a Gemara Ma'ikad. The Gemara Ma'ikad in Daf Chof Aleph, Amud Aleph tells us the following halacha. Amar Chalvoi, Amar Uva Mira, Amar B'Lazar. So a statement that goes back to B'Lazar. B'Lazar said that there are certain things that a person sees, they have to rip Kriya. So the Gemara says this all. B'Lazar said, Haroi Ari Yehuda B'Chorban. The person sees the cities of Yehuda, of Eretz Yisrael, in desolation. And B'Lazar said, you say a certain pasuk, V'Kareh, and you rip. Yerushalayim B'Chorban, if you see Yerushalayim in a state of desolation, whenever you say a certain pasuk, V'Kareh, and you rip. Beis Hamikdash B'Chorban, when you see the Beis Hamikdash in its destruction, so also in the pasuk you say V'Kareh. That's the halacha. And then Rabbi Lazar goes on to explain that if a person sees Yerushalayim and then sees the Harav, so you have to make a new Kriya, or maybe just extend the old Kriya in Yerushalayim. So Rabbi Lazar goes on to explain that if a person ripped for Yerushalayim, the Beis Hamikdash deserves its own Kriya. So if a person ripped for Yerushalayim, you have to make a separate Kriya for the Harav. But if somehow we saw the Harav first, Rashi gives the example, you were in a wagon or something, you didn't see where you were being brought. You just went out of the wagon and you see the Harav. So then you're a Kriya for the Harav. And then when you leave that place and you see Yerushalayim, you can just make an extension of the Kriya under the Harav for Yerushalayim. That's the discussion almost. Then the Gemara brings out a Brisa that sort of also talks about these halachas. And the Brisa says, even Shadilat Seifin Kriya, that this Kriya that you're ripping, you're able to do it once you get to this place of Seifin. Now, what's unclear from the Brisa is what this place of Seifin is, and what Kriya are you ripping when you get to Seifin. Are you ripping for Yerushalayim? The Brisa is talking about these Yerushalayim and Harav. That's the Brisa is talking. So it's definitely one of the two. But the question is, when you get to Seifin, you rip for what? And it's the thing you have to know. Because Elazar told us that there's differences in halacha about the Kriya for Yerushalayim versus the Kriya for Harav. It's a different something to say. And then you have to know, when you see the other one, are you making a new Kriya, or are you making an extension on the old? So if you're ripping by Harav Seifin, you have to know what you're ripping for. So what is that about? So the Gemara, like I said, the Gemara doesn't say. All the Gemara says is, even Shagilat Seifin, you get the Seifin to rip. But for what? So what is this place of Seifin, and what is it related to? So that's the machlekes between Rashi places and Maseches Pesachim. This Gemara is Mishnah in Maseches Pesachim. The background, the halacha is that when the person brought karbanos, when we drink karbanos, there's certain karbanos that all karbanos have a certain limitation of space on where you're allowed to eat them. Depending on the severity of the kedusha, the space is more limited. So kachikalim, for example, has to be eaten within Yerushalayim al-Kohan. So the Gemara says like this: it's a Mishnah in Maseches Pesachim. Let's say a person's traveling from Yerushalayim. And he realizes that he has some kosher, he has some karbanos, he has some meat from the karban in his baggage. Now the problem is, once the kosher left its boundaries, it has to be burnt, you're not allowed to eat it anymore. Now technically the halacha is that if karbanos have to be burnt and destroyed, they have to be destroyed in the same place that you eat them. So really what this person should be doing is going back to Yerushalayim and now burn the kosher that he realized he was carrying. But the Mishnah says it happened. The Mishnah says, in over Seifin, if he passed the place of Seifin, Sarfim Mekayim, the Chazal or Mekel, just burn it where you are. In Lav, if you're still within the boundaries of Seifin, then Chayzer is Seifin Ne'avir, then Chazal or Machmar, you have to go back to burn in the proper place. But once you pass Seifin, then it's already too far. You're not going to be much. That's the Mishnah. So what is this place of Seifin? It's the same Seifin that the Gemara might have also with Kriya. So what's Seifin? So Rashi says as follows: Seifin, says Rashi, is Sheikh Bar, is the name of a village. Sheyachol Lirois Beis Hamikdash. So Rashi says Seifin is a particular location, and this spot had a particular vantage point that you can see the Beis Hamikdash. So that's what Seifin is. And so that's what the Mishnah is saying. When you get past Seifin, you're already too far, just burn it where you are. If you report Seifin, then go back. But Seifim is a particular point where you can see Beis HaMikdash. You can see at this point is Beis HaMikdash. Obviously, no Beis HaMikdash is the Harav. That's Rashi. Tosfos says now like that. Tosfos says, Pirush B'Kunshus, Rashi says, Shem Friday, it's a village that you can see Beis HaMikdash. Tosfos has kashas on that. V'Oimeri, so Tosfos brings down from Mitzvah from the Re, that Mefarish that he explained differently. That Seifim was not a particular like spot, but Seifim means a particular distance from Yerushalayim that you can see Yerushalayim in the circumference. Because when you get, there's a certain point of where there's Yerushalayim proper, the walls of Yerushalayim, and then you keep on moving away from the walls, at some point you stop seeing them. The point of where the farthest place where you can see Yerushalayim, that's called Seifim. And that's not a particular spot, that's the circumference of the city at a certain distance. The last place that you can see clearly the walls of Yerushalayim, that's called Seifim. Okay, so we have Machlokes Rashi places what Seifim is. Rashi says Seifim means the place from which the farthest point that you can see Harav is. And Tosfos says Seifim means the place that the farthest point that you can see Yerushalayim. So again, we had a Gemara in my Kod, Mishnah said that when you have to agree when you see the Harav is Ruchabana, and when you see Yerushalayim Ruchabana. And said the Brisa, when you see Seifim, you can rip. What that ripping? Are you ripping for the base of the Midrash, ripping for Yerushalayim? Which one? So Stam is telling us much like this between Rashi and Tosfos. Rashi that says Seifim is a place to see the base of Mikdash, that's its significance. So when the Mishnah when the Gemara says in my Kod, when you get to Seifim, you can rip, that's a rip for the base of Mikdash. The base of Mikdash, the core base of Mikdash is so intense that even from a distant place, once you see it, you rip for the base of Mikdash. You get closer, you rip for Yerushalayim. That's the sheet of Rashi. The sheet of Tosfos is that Seifim doesn't have a significance versus in terms of base of Mikdash. Seifim is the place where you can see Yerushalayim. So when the Gemara says in my Kod, when you get to Seifim, what are you ripping for? Yerushalayim. So it's Machlokes Rashi places this kriya of Seifim, is it for Yerushalayim or is it for base of Mikdash? Okay, simple. The problem is the Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchos Beis HaBechira, when the Rambam talks about this place of Seifim, the Rambam says, like Rashi, that Seifim is a particular location from which you can see the Beis HaMikdash. Why? If that's true, then when the Rambam records the halacha of Medikadim, that when you get to Seifim you have to rip, you should record that as the ripping for what? For the Beis HaMikdash. That's what Seifim is. Seifim is a place you can see Beis HaMikdash. That's its significance. But yet, the Rambam in Hilchos Tainis, Parakeh in Hilchos Tainis, Parakeh Zayin, the Rambam records the halachas of Kriya, and he says the same thing we saw before. Mishra or Yehuda b'Chavanam, if the person saw the cities of Yehuda destroyed, you say Pasuk, the Kereya. Ra Yerushalayim b'Chavanam, if you see Yerushalayim into destruction, again you say Pasuk, and Kereya, they snitch and so on. And says the Rambam, when it comes to the ripping of Yerushalayim, Mehecha Chayiv b'Kereya, where is the spot from which you're now obligated to rip? Then outside. So it's a belt. The Rambam in Hilchos Beis HaBechira says, what's the significance of Seifim? That's the spot you can see Beis HaMikdash. Yet the Rambam in Hilchos Tainis says, and when you get to that spot, you're on Yerushalayim. Let's look at the other, I don't get it. Rashi said it's the place that you see Beis HaMikdash, and you're ripping on Beis HaMikdash. Tosfos said it's where you see Yerushalayim, you're ripping on Yerushalayim. The Rambam says it's where you see the Beis HaMikdash, and you're ripping on Yerushalayim. What's going on here? So it's like this. There's a Sifri in Parshas Dvarim. Too many papers of one. Sifri says like this. There's a whole the Sifri in Parshas Dvarim has a whole back and forth between two Tanaim. Between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yussie ben Damascus. As you can tell, he came from Damascus. So Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yussie ben Damascus are having this conversation like this. So the Gemara says that Rabbi Yussie ben Damascus said the following Torah: V'nayin shasida Yerushalayim nisbegas ad Damascus. So Rabbi Yussie said, how do I know that when Mashiach comes, the borders of Yerushalayim will expand? Right now, this idea that when Mashiach comes, our soul will expand, everything's getting bigger. So Yerushalayim will expand. So said Rabbi Yussie, how do I know that Mashiach comes, Yerushalayim, the borders of Yerushalayim will be by Damascus. That's where it's going to be. How do I know? Shenemar, So Rabbi Yossi said, the pasuk says, "With Damascus menuchasa," that Damascus will be his place of menucha. And said Rabbi Yossi, "The aim menuchasa el Yerushalayim." And we know that the place of menucha is always a reference to Yerushalayim. So it's menuchasa el Yad. So it says Rabbi Yossi, the pasuk is Damascus menuchasa. Damascus menuchasa. Yerushalayim is menuchasa. The answer is when Mashiach comes, Yerushalayim will be Damascus. Omer lo Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda says, how's that possible? Ma'at Makayim v'nivna sagir al tira. It says in pasuk we said that we want the Beis Hamikdash when Mashiach to come, and the city of Yerushalayim will be built on its foundations, on its ruins, on its foundations. Its foundations are in the spot of Yerushalayim now, not Damascus. So when you tell me that goes to Damascus, it's not being built on its field, it's not being built on its foundations. So Omer lo, so Rabbi Yossi responded as follows: it says "V'rachva v'nisa l'mal l'mal l'saviv l'bayis," that it's describing again Yerushalayim and so on, and the Yerushalayim is being described as being expansive, l'mal, above. What does that mean? So Rabbi Yossi explained, "Sha'asida Yerushalayim is marcheves v'oyla mikol tzeddeha k'te'ein azu shetzar melamata." Again, how this will work out, we'll have to see with our own eyes. But it says Rabbi Yossi, the way Yerushalayim is going to expand is that it's going to be like a ta'ena, like a ta'ena tree, where it's narrow on the bottom, and then like by the trunk, and then when the branches come, it's wide. So Yerushalayim, the foundation will be where it is right now, Yerushalayim, and that's where it's going to be built. But then, it'll be raised up like it was, like a city. But then it's going to expand out all the way to Damascus. Okay, that's what it's going to be. B'shar Yerushalayim, the city became out Damascus. So both are true. It'll reach the Damascus, but it'll be in the city of Tila, because that's the way the city's going to be. It's going to be, the foundation is going to be in Yerushalayim, proper, the old Kulim. But from there, it'll expand out. Now the truth is, this is not just some obscure. It is obscure Sifri, but it's also really the backdrop to appreciate, to understand the Gemara Basra. There's Gemara Basra, Ayin Hayim the days, which also talks about the expansion of Yerushalayim. And the Gemara says like this: Omer Chanin Bar Papa. Chanin Bar Papa said, "The Kadosh Baruch Hu lases es Yerushalayim b'mida." The Rebbeinu Shalom wanted to give Yerushalayim a definitive measurement. Shenemar. V'omer ana atahoylech v'yomer hilei lamud es Yerushalayim liras kama rachba kama arka. It's a pasuk in Yechezkel that Hashem tells the Navi, go to Yerushalayim and measure it. So that's the Rebbeinu Shalom's ratzon that Yerushalayim should be measured. Omer malach yashar sefnei Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara Bavasra, the Malachim say to Hashem, Rebbeinu Shalom, Habik rachem brasa v'yomecha. Shalom Yisrael, many cities by the guy in the world. When it's not to be this ark and this rachman, and you never established it has to be this big. It's as much as people need. They want to make expansions, they expand the city. And Yerushalayim, sheshimcha b'saycha, that your name is in the city. U'mikdashcha b'saycha, and your mikdash is in the city. The tzaddikim b'saycha, and tzaddikim are in the city. And the Meisim B'Amida, you're putting a limitation on it. So Mayad v'yomer Eila, so immediately the pasuk, going back to the pasuk in Yechezkel, Hashem says to the Navi, Roitz daber l'nar laz, go tell the Navi, Prozei stays Tesha Yerushalayim, that Yerushalayim will be an open, expansive city without limitation. So in the Pashut Shana Gemara, it's like this machlokes, or this back and forth. Hashem first thinks we'll make a limitation for some reason, and the Malachim say it's not a good idea. Obviously, it's don't have the why should Yerushalayim. So then they find you're right. It'll be open. But once we have the Sifri, then we understand that it's not a machlokes. They're both true. There are a bunch of Ratzin, for whatever reason, is that Yerushalayim should have a goal to it. Yerushalayim should have a goal to it. That's going to be, as Rabbi Yossi said, the building of Yerushalayim is still going to be al tila. It's still going to be on its foundations. But at the same time, it's also going to be expansive, because it's going to then move up above its foundations and then expand outward like a ta'ena tree. So that's the oimek based on the Sifri. That's the oimek of what this Gemara is talking about. The Rebbeinu Shalom and the Malachim are completing each other. Hashem is talking about one aspect, and the Malachim are trying to bring out another aspect. I'll go upon what we see from this. You see that in the future, Yerushalayim is going to be expanded all the way to Damascus. But what's interesting is when the Malachim are bringing out this point of Yerushalayim's ability to expand and its future expansion, the Nekudas the Malachim said were, why should Yerushalayim deserve expansion? Why should it deserve that? So Malachim aren't just saying Yerushalayim is no different than any other city. They're giving you reasons why Itafra should be expansive, and the explanations were, Shencha B'Soicha, your name is in the city, the Mikdash is in the city, Tzaddikim are in the city. Those three things that Malachim said, your name, the Mikdash, and Tzaddikim are really one and the same thing. That's the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash is a place where it says in Kosev, L'shakein Shmoi Sham. The Beis HaMikdash is a place upon which Hashem's name rests. That's what makes the Beis HaMikdash. Tzaddikim are also B'china of the Beis HaMikdash. V'asli Mikdash, V'shechanti, V'soicham. So all three Nekudas that the Malachim are saying are revolving around the central Nekuda, the center one, which is Mikdash V'soicham. The context of the Mikdash is the name of Hashem upon it and its ability to affect the population and its surroundings. It's not just contained in that building. So that's what the Malachim are highlighting. In other words, what comes out from the Malachim's conversation with the Rebbeinu Shalom is the following thing. Yerushalayim is going to be expanded, but the source of its ability to expand is the Beis HaMikdash within it. So the expansion of the Beis HaMikdash is fueled, the expansion of Yerushalayim is in fact fueled by the Beis HaMikdash. That's what we see from the Gemara. Now let's go back to the halacha of Tzayfer. Rama, you're standing at a distance from Yerushalayim. You're not in Yerushalayim, you're not even close to Yerushalayim, you're not even about to enter. If you want to rip, if a person has to ask their prayer over Ar Yehuda, then you have to be either in Ar Yehuda, Mamish, about to walk in, you have to be. All of a sudden with Yerushalayim, once you get to Tzayfen, you could rip Kriya. Why? It's not the pshat that Yerushalayim with Rabban is such a terrible thing that even from a distance you have to rip Kriya on. No. The pneumius of that halacha, that once you get to Tzayfen, you rip Kriya, is because Yerushalayim is going to be there also. Based on the expanded dimensions of Yerushalayim, you're in Yerushalayim already. But since we saw, and that's why you're able to agree already, because you're in Yerushalayim. But since we saw that Malachim explained that the source of the expansion of Yerushalayim, its ability to expand, is because of Mikdash, so your ability to connect to the future expanded dimensions of Yerushalayim depend on your establishment to Mikdash. So it says the Rambam. When you get to Tzayfen, you rip your Kriya on the future Yerushalayim that's going to be where you're standing. But the only way you can connect to that is because you can see Harav. So it says the Rambam, Tzayfen is the place that you see the Beis HaMikdash, or the Chorban Beis HaMikdash. And that's what gives you the ability to rip Kriya on Yerushalayim. Because that's right now. Where are you standing right now? Without a Beis HaMikdash, you're standing outside of Yerushalayim. But through Hiskashus to Beis HaMikdash, that fuels the expansion of Yerushalayim. And once Yerushalayim is expanded, it means that's where you're standing right now, so you can agree on Yerushalayim. What we see from this is something, what's contained in this halacha, therefore, is an amazing truth, which is that this expansion of Yerushalayim is not only something that will take place in the future. The pnimi is, the expansion is already there. Or it's almost as if the expanded dimensions of Yerushalayim already exist b'koyach. They already exist in potential. It's just a matter of it being nizgala, of it being revealed b'koyach. And by this person, he's this Maisa of ripping Kriya on Yerushalayim from the place that he can see the Beis HaMikdash. He's tapping into the koyach, the potential, the mysterious reality behind the scenes, which is that Yerushalayim has already been expanded. Now, that halacha, what's ironic is that halacha of the expansion of Yerushalayim doesn't affect like Kashikalim. It doesn't affect any halachas, except for halachas that are like negative. So ripping Kriya, mourning over Yerushalayim, we sort of recognize the reality of the expanded version of Yerushalayim, which we haven't seen yet. Or the halacha of when the person realizes that he messed up and he has kachim in his suitcase, and he shouldn't have had it with him. So then we also recognize that Tzayfen is like a certain it's a significant factor. But this Indian of the expanded borders of Yerushalayim already existed, and not being something new that comes later when Mashiach comes. But it's l'maisa right now. It's just that we don't see it yet, where it hasn't been worked out with Torah. it already is rooted and is hinted to in the surah, in the very type of expansion that Chazal described. Chazal describes from the Sifri, based on the Gemara also, that the description of the expansion of Yerushalayim is that it's still in the Sedir al-Kiwa. It's still built on its old foundations. But from that spot, then it will expand upward and outward. Right? That's a funny thing. So that's why they take a look at the Gemara of Asra, Ayinei over there. The Gemara then goes on to say that the Gemara is hinting, but it doesn't really explain so much. But the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan records that Yerushalayim is going to be, the entrance of Yerushalayim is going to be very high. And even though, as the Gemara says, Gimel Parsai, it's 3 Parsai high. And so you would imagine, you have to, that's a big ladder, how do you get up? So Rabbi Yochanan says that when Mashiach comes, despite the fact that it's going to be so high, it's not going to be Shema Tomer Yish Tsar La'alos, maybe it'll be difficult to get there. So he quotes a pasuk, Me'ela Ka'av to a fennel, we'll have the strength like a cloud, we'll just be able to ascend. Why is Yerushalayim so high? Why are the gates not on the floor? I don't get it. The answer is the Gemara is referencing this side of the Sifri. By the place of Yerushalayim, that's what borders are, but by the time you actually get to the gates which are in the Mesa, it's high up, like a thing. So you see the Tzura of Yerushalayim and its expansiveness is something, it's an expansion, but the expansion is what is contained in its own borders. And the reason for that is because it's what Chazal are revealing to us is the secret is that the expansion of Yerushalayim already exists now. It's not a new Haisafa. There is such an idea in halacha of being moisiv, of adding to the city of Yerushalayim. There's a process of doing that. There's a whole subject of how to do that. You have to have the borders to bring, it's an engine, there's a whole parade, there's a whole ceremony how to expand the borders of Yerushalayim. That's not going to be necessary when Mashiach comes. When Rabbi Yussie the Damascus reveals this truth that Yerushalayim expands to Damascus, it's not going to need the technical details of expanding the city. Why not? The answer is it's not an expansion of the city. It's a revelation of what the city always was, what the kaychas the city always had. The city of Yerushalayim always had the ability to expand all the way to the north. Our eyes couldn't see it. We know the kaychas to bring it out. And ironically, that year, the Tripping Kriya, from a vantage point of the Beis HaMikdash, he can do it. Because as I said, the two nekudas that we're seeing from this sugya about the expansion of Yerushalayim is, number one, it already is there. The kaychas are already there. And number two, what's fueling that expansion is the Beis HaMikdash. Fine. So now let's investigate the themes of this. And by the way, just on the side, we're not going to go into this nekuda right now, but just in parentheses, this inyan of the eventual expansion of Yerushalayim all the way to Damascus, which is interesting because even though the Gemara describes Yerushalayim as like a taina, right, like a taina tree, if you imagine a tree, so it's expanded on both sides. But what's interesting is the Gemara doesn't give the borders and the boundaries of how southern Yerushalayim goes. The only place, demarcation that talks about how far Yerushalayim goes is up north, all the way to the Mesa. There's a site over here, which is the Yichud of Mashiach. That's the territory of Yisrael Tzadik. That's the Mashiach and Yisrael territory. The Ariya Kaddish, whose Malchus exists in the north of Eretz Yisrael. So he said about himself he was Mashiach and Yisrael. Mashiach and Yisrael is in the north, Mashiach and David is in the south. The ultimate Gula, Gul Rachman, is Yichud between the two of them. Yerushalayim is going to be expanded all the way to the north. That's why it's interesting. I mentioned many times that the Kayach of uniting Mashiach and Yisrael and Mashiach and David is by who? Mashiach. Why does it mark the example of the Ta'ina tree? All trees are like that. No? Every tree starts off narrow and then gets wide. And that's what a tree is. The Ta'ina tree is the Ta'ina. In the Shivas Aminim, the Rizal writes in the Kutei Torah that Shivas Aminim correspond to the different midas. The Ta'ina corresponds to Netzach, which means conquest. Who's the leader of Netzach? It's Moshe. The Kayach of Moshe Rabbeinu was what allows the expansion of Yerushalayim all the way to the north. That's the themes of what's going on in this Gemara. But let's try to understand the Shuir form of what's being told us by this inyan of Yerushalayim being expanded. The fueling of that expansion is by Beis HaMikdash, but the etzem, the expansion exists now. Okay, so the Shuir form, the root of this takes us all the way back to the beginning of creation. We'll go to Kitzer. I'm sure some of you have heard this before, and if you haven't, then like you're learning. The Rizal says in the beginning of its time like this. Rizal says in the beginning, before there was time, before anything, before creation, all there was insight. All there was an infinite light of God, subsuming all of reality. All there was that. That was reality. But in order for there to be islandness, in order for there to be worlds, there was the Kedusha, and Hapach, and Bechira, and everything that exists as we know it, the Rebbeinu Shalom had to create an empty space, Simpson, the Rebbeinu Shalom made a Chalal point empty space. And the Rizal describes the process of the Rebbeinu Shalom was in Samson. The Rebbeinu Shalom constricted his light. Almost if you could imagine, these words are, an infinite ocean of light, and in the centermost point, which is paradoxical, is infinite, the centermost point, the light removes or expands itself out, leaving a sphere of emptiness. In that emptiness, that's called the Chalal point. Okay, now you have the Malkim, now you have the space for creation. But you don't have the energy you don't have the creative, you don't have the material, and you don't have the creative energy, you just have the space. Let's say it like that. So what did Rebbeinu Shalom then do? So the result of Megala, what the Rebbeinu Shalom did then was that he took the surrounding infinite light, and he was mamshir, the Rebbeinu Shalom was mamshir a kav, a ray of that infinite light into the Chalal Panay. Not all the way down, there's details about this, into that infinite, into that Chalal Panay. And from there, now you have energy, now you have kaiches, now you have the creative possibility. And from that kav, from that ray of light, from there emerges worlds. From there emerges all the islandness within the space of the Chalal Panay. Let's understand. The secret of Yerushalayim and the Beis Hamikdash, everything is reflected in Yerushalayim and the Beis Hamikdash. Yerushalayim is a code word for the whole world. Yerushalayim is a code word for Knesset Yisrael. Dabra, Lev Yerushalayim, Yekir Lev. You have the city of Yerushalayim with its walls. It's an interesting thing. The walls of Yerushalayim are very much a part of not only the psychological and the emotional attachment to Yerushalayim is the walls of the city, like Kaisam Arabi. But even in Halacha, the walls of Yerushalayim, the Gevulim of Yerushalayim is a significant factor. The Rebbeinu Shalom of all cities wanted to put a midah on Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim represents the Chalal Panay in the empty space, the sphere within which reality exists. That's Yerushalayim. The Beis Hamikdash is that point of the Kav, the point of that ray of infinite light that enters into the Chalal Panay, creating reality and things emerging out of that. Everything that's Yerushalayim is Pashut, not simple level, centered around Beis Hamikdash. It's centered around Beis Hamikdash. So the Beis Hamikdash means that Kav, and Yerushalayim means the Chalal Panay. Okay. Comes Chassidus. Chassidus reveals to us the following side. And it's something that Rav Nachman famously talks about in one of his prayers in the Put Maran, but it's an underpinning of all Teres Chassidus and all of Avodas Hashem of the Baal Shem Tov, which is the following thing. Is that there's two main functions of what the Kav does, that ray of light that comes into reality. There's two functions of that. Simple pshat, when you learn Kisveri, it wasn't the Sister Torah, so what emerges clearly is, like I said before, is that Kav is the root of existence. Everything that exists is feeding off of that Kav. That's the root of reality. The Chalal Panay is the space that it exists within. The Chassidus comes to explain that there's a deeper purpose of that Kav, and the deeper purpose of that Kav is to reveal the hidden light of the Rebbeinu Shalom that always still remains within the Chalal Panay. So even when the Rebbeinu Shalom Kiviyachol created this tzimtzum that restricted his light, Chassidus tells us that was only for our perspective, and it's only to allow us to exist. And even that experience itself was a divine experience. And anything God does is automatically infinite. Even when God creates finite space, if He's doing it, it means it's still infinite. And this is the secret of the Chalal Panay. The secret of the Chalal Panay is that it's not so empty. But what it's filled with doesn't take away from its measure. The finity of that space, allowing reality to exist, doesn't take away from the fact that it's still saturated with infinite light. And the infinite light doesn't take away from the fact that it's still a finite space. In Chassidus we're taught that the purpose of the Kav, the deepest purpose of the Kav, is to give reality the tools within which to discover the infinite light of God that actually still is contained within the space itself. Now let me explain how this manifests itself in Avodah. One of the great principles of the Baal Shem Tov in Chassidus, and very often it's lost in terms of what the Shuir is, where it's rooted from. Everything that Baal Shem Tov taught is rooted in the Kisveri, which itself is rooted in Torah and in Halach as well, as we'll see right now. But one of the basic rules of Chassidus, and Avodas Hashem is that when a person learns Torah, a person kolemer enigma of Torah, Torah enigma, the Mishnah says. When a person learns Torah, a person has to become sensitive to then find the Rebbeinu Shalom, their parnasa, in the Chol Derech Echad. The Gemara even says a lashon like this. He says that a yid who after learning does not become more sensitive to Hashem's presence in the more mundane aspects of his life or her life, it's a simon that they weren't good. It's a simon that the Torah wasn't good. So that's a beautiful bargain. It's a beautiful chizuk for people that are not sitting learning all day. What's the Shuir Shadavar? The Shuir Shadavar is this side. Rashash writes in Rechavis Hanor, Shal Shirabi says the side of the Kav that comes into the empty space, that's Torah, that's the side of Torah. The empty space is the side of everything else. Comes Chassidus, and Chassidus reveals to us that the secret of the Kav is not just to give light from the Kav. Not to illuminate learning, that's the Kav itself. But the secret of the Kav is to give us the ability and the tools to discover the Aron Sight that still exists within the Chalabon. Translated in Avodah, when a person learns, their learning has to give them the ability to find God in everything. And if they're not finding God in everything, it means they're not really shaykh to the Kav either. This surah, this inyan of the Kav coming in and revealing the infinite light of God that already exists in the Chalal HaPanim, and by its very definition, that light of God that already exists in the Chalal HaPanim is a light that's eternal and forever. It's a light that precedes creation. Is captured by this side of Yerushalayim and its expansiveness. Yerushalayim, again, what was Yerushalayim? Yerushalayim is the Chalal HaPanim, it's the empty space. It's the midah, it has kavulim, it's a kaisel, it has walls. But yet, Lavai, from within its gvula, it's living Shuir Altila, it's still being built on its foundation, but from within its gvula, it's expanding all the way to the north. It means the site of the expansion of Yerushalayim is the revelation of the infinite light of God that always was in the Chalal. That's why it's not an expansion that's then going to happen. It always is even right now. That's the nature of this expansion. Since the expansion is the infinite light of Hashem, well, if it's the infinite light of Hashem, then automatically it's going to have a beginning and an end. Fakir, the light of the expansion itself is coming from the light that precedes creation. That means to whatever degree this expansion is shaykh to us, and this expansion that has already happened, it has to have already happened. It has to be from within the Gevulum itself. And since the Baal Shem Tov taught that the way to have a shaykhis to that hidden light within the Chalal HaPanim is through the Kav, and the Kav is the Mikdash, the Rambam Masli, that in order to have a shaykhis to what? The infinite light that's contained in Yerushalayim right now, you have to have a shaykhis to Mikdash. When you stand from Tzofim and you see the Beis HaMikdash, the Harav, then you could acknowledge the fact that you're also standing in Yerushalayim, even if you're outside the walls. So you read Kriya on Yerushalayim from Tzofim because you see the Beis HaMikdash. Because the Beis HaMikdash is the Kav. And the Kav gives us the koyches to see the infinite light of Hashem within the Chalal HaPanim. So when you have the Beis HaMikdash, then you realize Yerushalayim is all the way to Damascus even right now. And so that's the side of what's going on in this Chazal. But now let's take it one step further. Once we see that the Kriya over Yerushalayim, as the Gemara says, and you're chayvu from Tzofim to Eilah, from once you hit Tzofim, we can then now suggest that the type of Kriya over Yerushalayim is a fundamentally different type of Kriya than anything else. For example, I mentioned the Gemara says that Haroya or Yehuda B'Chovanah, if you see the cities of Yehuda in disruption, you have to agree. If you see Yerushalayim, also you have to agree. Ramban in one of the Storm Taras Adam, so he asked the question, Ramban, Yerushalayim is also one of the Ar Yehuda. So once you tell me the halacha that you have to Kriya on Ar Yehuda, then Yerushalayim is contained within that. Why does the Gemara have to then say, and if you see Yerushalayim also you have to reprieve? So if you want to just say that the point of the Gemara is just to make the extra detail that for Yerushalayim you have this Seifim boundary, then just say that. But the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara repeats itself. You see Ar Yehuda, you have to reprieve. You see Ar Yerushalayim, you have to reprieve. And where do you reprieve from? Okay, according to the Yerushalayim, you reprieve over, from Rashi, over Yerushalayim, from Seifim. But that extra line, that if you see Yerushalayim, you have to reprieve, it's unnecessary. Of course, it's one of the Ar Yehuda. The answer is, according to what we're saying, it's a whole different avodah. When you're ripping Kriya over Ar Yehuda, you're ripping Kriya over something that has been lost. Lost. The city of whatever the city that you're ripping, whatever the cities that you're mourning over, it doesn't exist anymore. You're hoping one day it'll be rebuilt. But the Maisi Kriya, the Avelos that you're feeling, is an Avelos over something that's Chavala, Da'av, and Loimshtach. The Loimshtach. But the Kriya in Yerushalayim is not like that. But Haraya, you rip Kriya from Tzayfim. If you're ripping Kriya from Tzayfim, it means that you're acknowledging that Yerushalayim already exists. Not only does Yerushalayim exist, Yerushalayim exists with Damascus. Mashiach and Yussie and Mashiach and David are ready for Brian. Moshe Rabbeinu is already making the Yichud. Yes, just Yimit Shachman. The site of Kriya from Tzayfim is you're not ripping Kriya on Chaval Abdul V'Mishtachim. You're ripping Kriya in frustration over our inability to see what's in front of our own eyes. That's the Kriya Mishnah. It's different avodah. If the Brisa has to list both. Haray or Yud Rechavana, you're Kriya. Haray Yerushalayim Rechavana, it's a different avodah. It's like we saw, the last thing that you say before the end of Shachar, right? Alei Tzion, right? So there, what's the word? It's good enough to remember. Alei Tzion, K'may Isha B'tzirah, Chetsula Chadur Sak Al Merah. So we're saying that we're crying over Beis HaMikdash like a woman in childbirth, and like a woman who lost her husband. Those are two different types of crying. A woman, someone that lost someone, that's Chaval Da'af, and that's ripping Kriya, that's already Yehud. But K'may Isha B'tzirah, an Isha that's giving birth, she's also crying. That's a whole different avodah. She's not really crying even. I mean, she's crying. It's not mourning. That's the avoid of crying in order to push something out from hiding. That's how we moved from pre-chatzais to post-chatzais, or late Sinai. Because that's the difference between before chatzais Tisha B'Av and after chatzais Tisha B'Av. Before chatzais Tisha B'Av, even though every part of the day has a little bit of both. But the ikr, the first part of Tisha B'Av is like ripping Kriya over Ar Yehud. Chaval Avdin V'Mishtachim. Isha B'Sura Sak, Aval Mereh. The second end of Tisha B'Av is also ripping Kriya. It's also Avelos. But the Avelos is K'may Isha B'Tzirah, it's not safe in the Eilich. You're ripping Kriya over Yerushalayim. Let's go back to the very beginning. We start with the nice Gemara at the end of Damascus, right? The Gemara says in Damascus, Shul Pamachas Ha'il Yerushalayim, that the Kiv and the Chachamim, they were going to Yerushalayim. When they got the Har Tzayfim, they were Kriya. And then they got the Har Bayis, and the whole nice ensue, the Chacham are crying, the Kiv is laughing, and he gives them comfort, Kiv and Chacham. So you asked the question in the beginning, why does it have to start with that line? They got to Yerushalayim, they got to Tzayfim, they were Kriya. That's not part of the story. The point of the story, if you're just going to tell us the halacha that you have to reprieve from Tzayfim, that's Gemara Moed. When you get the time, either you've learned Moed already or you're about to. It's the same volume. Okay. So this is unnecessary. The reason why this story is being recorded in Shas is for the mice, the Har Bayis, for the foxes and laughing and crying. That's the point. So why does the Gemara have to introduce it with this sin of ripping Kriya from Tzayfim? The answer is that's the side of Rabbi Akiva was saying. When Rabbi Akiva was laughing, he also ripped Kriya on the Beis HaMikdash, and he's laughing. That's what their business is that. That's what they're asking. What are you laughing for? Not only the question is why are you laughing. It's how are you laughing right now? Why? I mean, anyway. You see what Rabbi Akiva did, and what's Rabbi Akiva's response? Rabbi Akiva's response is, when I see the Churban reminds me of the iris that are beneath it. Rabbi Akiva is saying that when you rip Kriya, when you're mourning Beis HaMikdash, don't do it pre-Chatzais, do it after Chatzais. Do it in a way of where your Kriya is an expression of your of your anticipation and your frustration over not seeing what's already there. The Gemara is hinting that al pi halacha, al pi din, the root of that is the kriya from sight. That's the thing. In order to explain the legitimacy of Rabbi Akiva, which is Akiva Nachatan, that there's an inyan of mourning, but the mourning is in a way that's full of tikva, of hope, of anticipation, that's fueled by the kav. That's what Chal writes in one place that the word kav comes from the word tikva, which is hope. That's what's fueling the kriya. The guy's standing by Tzayfin, and he's ripping over Yerushalayim, but only because he sees the Beis HaMikdash, which is the site of the Kav, which is hopefulness. His hopefulness is fueling his avelus. Because his avelus is not mourning over someone that's lost and can't be found until Mashiach comes. What are we going to do? His kriya, his mourning, is the sight of seeing of a maisa that's bringing out of him a pnimius in order to find the pnimius that's there. And this is the irony of all ironies, is that in order to find that pnimius inyan, which is the orient sight that exists within the kav, within the chalal, within the empty space, it sometimes requires a person to fall into a place of like namish, like yish, almost. And then from there you can find the orient sight. Because this is the irony, as long as if you're holding on to the kav and the kav is shining brightly, then you're not forced to find the infinite light of God that's hiding in the chalal upon. So the person is strong and tired, he's having a good day, and the kav is shining brightly, and there's a Beis HaMikdash built, and everything is gewaldic, then he's not forced to find the infinite light of God that never left from its instance. He's not forced to find that. So, and then what happens is that he actually can develop a hashkafa and develop a perspective that there is no light in the Chalal Pani, and only the light that exists is in the Kav. That's only because he was never forced to look. But if not, that we want Yidden that are Kav Yidden, let them have the Kav Tzivah, we need them. But those Yidden that are forced into that world of the Chalal Pani because the Kav is maybe not as strong or whatever the matzav is, and that's when they're forced to find the orient set that exists within the Chalal Pani, and then they'll be able to find it. It's dafka when the person is in the context of ripping kriya. That's when this truth emerges. In all, like I said before, in all the sugyas in halacha, the only places in halacha, actually, I can say that, but as far as I know, the only places in halacha where this truth of the expanded territory of Yerushalayim, existing already right now, emerges, is in by ripping kriya over the Churban, and a person that messed up and brought kachim outside of the Gula, and now he has to do tshuva and burn the kachim. That's the only places where you have the remnants of this Indian, that the borders of Yerushalayim already reached them. And the light of the infinite light of Yerushalayim exists within the Chalal Pani. It's because those are the types of Eden that are able to discover that light, because they don't have any other choice. They don't have any other choice, because the Kav seems to be shut off a little bit, or at least not as bright as it is. And they're not in the space of the Kav, they're in the farther reaches of the hemisphere, you know. So they have no choice but to force themselves to find that. That's the avodah, that's the akiva nechamtona, that's the nechama that Rabbi brings us, that's the avodah of this time. And this takes Tisha B'Av into Tu B'Av, and takes us into the Chulu. It's realizing that from that place of Churban, we realize that Gula is mamish there, and Adarabba, realizing that doesn't make a person more lax in their avodah, quite the opposite. The guy's ripping kriya, and he's ripping kriya, and it's like a veil. Knowing that it's right in these surfaces, the klaya, it's just not the poil yet, makes the motivation that much sharper, and that much more potent, and it's more, and you realize, and it become more sensitive to the tsar of the Shekhinah in this process. Because if the Rebbeinu Shem's light is already filling the empty space, if the Hashem's light is not there, then the only victim is us. Okay, so you're Moshe. So that person can be Moshe. But if the infinite light of Hashem is already there, but for some reason it's not manifest, that it's not just our problem, it's the Yoshel's problem. And that we can be Michael in our union, and we can't be Michael in Hashem's union. And so then the avoida of Avelis and avoida of hoping for Mashiach becomes something that's beyond us, and bigger than us, and more necessary than just for us. And that's the Ikr Nechama Rabbi Akiva. Kiv Nechama isn't just like, okay, now we sit back. Rabbi Akiva, the Rambam says in Ochs Malachim, Rabbi Akiva was the tzaddik that was, he was the Nesek King of our Kochba. Rabbi Akiva was extremely passionate about Gula. If there was anyone that cared desperately about Mashiach, it was Rabbi Akiva. And it's the same Rabbi Akiva that was able to give comfort or support based on English. How do you have that? If Golos is not so bad, or Rabbi Akiva is giving comfort, then what that means you're not going to share so much. It's fakir. The Nechama of Rabbi Akiva and Pnimius was letting the Chachamim in on this secret that the light of Geula, light of Mashiach, was always within it. Ruach Elokim Mercheves Al Pnei Hamayim Zeruch Hashem Mashiach. The infinite light of Rebbeinu Shalom already exists in the Chal HaPanim. So whose Agmas Nefesh is it that it's not noticed? Not just for us. It's also Rebbeinu Shalom's Agmas Nefesh. That's why you want Mashiach. And that pushed Rabbi Akiva even more, not less. And so that's the avodah of this time. You're going to Mincha, you're going to Talis and Tefillin and so on. It's the avodah of, it's not taking away from Avelis, it's moving from Kriya over Or Yehuda to Kriya over Yerushalayim, which is not safe. You have to have eyes to see, to be able to see it. Shem Shabbos is talking that the schus of our getting together and our learning. I'll tell you one thing. Just one thing before I know it's already late. Let's not so quickly get it. But just one thing I'll say, and I have it's an opportunity because most people are here. I'm more people from this morning. But Mamish Hashem it's Mamish. It isn't such. I mean, at this point we're used to it. It's Mamish young people and avoid the tissue, but not melancholy, not avoid that. It's Mamish. Like I would want to come to be part of the show, you know what I'm saying? Not everybody can say that they would want to be part of the show. I would pay, I should do it my mom. No, I should have to talk about that. Hashem should bless all of you. Salve Yerushalayim, Zakutinsky, Binana. Hashem should bless everyone from there all the parties show. Wishing the generation to be Zakutinsky, Binana, the least of the ground.